So today I've invited Dean Gunnarson to come have a little chat with me about Houdini. Dean is an escape artist and magician who's appeared on TV in over 165 countries performing his escapes. He's won a Merlin Award along with the title World's Best Escape Artist, a Silver Cuffs Award of Lifetime Achievement for his many extreme escapes over nearly 3 decades of performing, has made a Ripley's record as World's Most Daring Escape Artist, 2 Guinness World Records for escaping on the TV show Spectacular World of Guinness, and was the first recipient and only escape artist to ever win the Houdini Award presented on the Magic Stars television show in Tokyo. He has also been honored for his work as a humanitarian. His major stunts include Buried Alive, Cement Tomb Escape, The Challenge at Hoover Dam, Gator Bait, Airplane Jump, The Car Crusher Escape, Houdini's Milk Can Escape, Houdini's Chinese Water Torture Cell, and many more. On top of this, when I was a kid living in Winnipeg, Manitoba, he still somehow found the time to come and perform magic tricks at my 5th birthday party, which is something that I will never forget. It's safe to say that Dean Gunnarson is our Houdini of today, which makes him a great guest to chat with for this video. So how are you doing today, Dean?
Hey, great. After all that, it's hard to believe I'm still alive and ticking. So thank you for having me on your show, and happy Halloween.
Yes, happy Halloween. I'm so happy that you're able to join me for this chat about Houdini. And I know that you're really busy right now, so I appreciate the time.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Again, I love talking about Houdini, and Halloween is my absolute favorite time of the year. It's my Christmas, so to speak.
Oh yeah, me too, absolutely. Before we get into topics, do you want to tell us a bit about your background there?
Well, sure. I mean, there's a lot to talk about, but I mean, basically, what I'm sitting in, what I call my morgue. It was featured on my TV series called Escape or Die, where each episode started in Canada and Manitoba, where I live, and we would devise escapes, and from there we would travel around the world trying all these different crazy escapes, going to China, getting chained to a roller coaster and trying to escape before it runs over me, or going to Malaysia, locked into a plexiglass coffin filled full of pit vipers, or in the Bahamas, locked in a metal coffin, thrown in the ocean with a bunch of sharks, or in Iceland, tied up on a Viking ship in the Atlantic Ocean, and in the January and the freezing weather, and escaping before it burned fire and blew up, and are buried alive in India. But every episode would start here in my morgue, and this is my workshop. It's a warehouse for my collection of escape props and magic memorabilia that I've used over my lifetime, and it's also my office where I run things, but I build things. And so over the years, I've just collected things. I've been collecting Houdini stuff since I was 10 years old. So that marks almost 49 years I've been collecting Houdini and magic stuff. And then also a few years ago, the Magic Museum in Canada closed, and I acquired all the magic history and props, and I brought it back to my morgue as well. So there's a lot of stuff. I don't really have it open to the public. I give tours when people ask. So I'm giving you a sneak peek behind the scenes of things that I have in my morgue. So I don't know what you can see all there, but it's just a whole collection of things. Oh, there's Elvis sitting behind me there. That's not Elvis, the king of rock and roll. That's Elvis, the king of escapes.
Oh, it's amazing.
So yeah, it's just filled with all these treasures and stuff. And I also have, my magic library, my books on Houdini, and things. So, and then I also have a lot of great posters there that actually your father has been involved in doing some of the colorization. Posted in up and around. He's done a lot of posters for me over the years, which I really like and are kind of cool.
Yeah, I remember all those projects. It was really neat. And trading cards, I think, at one point too, right?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I got one on my desk there. The old Dean Gunnarson trading cards. Those are like 1991.
Yeah, I remember I had a set of those.
Yeah. You still they still pop up on eBay and stuff here and again, but I always figure, well, they won't be worth a lot of money until I die someday, and then they'll go through the roof. So I got a couple of ex-wives counting on it. So
Oh dear. Oh, that's really cool. Next time I'm in Manitoba, I'll have to venture out and get an actual tour.
oh yeah, yeah, we'd love to give you a VIP tour of the morgue.
That'd be awesome. So, to touch on your professional background, I'll always remember your origin story, so to speak. You survived juvenile leukemia, which playwright Carolyn Gray dubs as your first escape.
Mhm.
From there, you began mirroring the training of your hero, Houdini. And can you tell us a bit about your discovery of Houdini and how he impacted you in those early years?
Yeah, well, Houdini played a very significant part in my career and my life. When I was 10 years old, my mom bought me my very first book on Houdini, and I kind of read it and got a feel of Houdini. It's in my morgue here in a special spot. I hang on to everything, but it gave me a feel of this man that could travel around the world and get out of impossible situations. He could get out of straitjackets that nobody could. He could get out of police handcuffs. He could break out of jail cells. He could hang by his ankles, high in the air, getting out of straitjackets and things. He would jump off bridges, chained and handcuffed, and escape. Locked in boxes, nailed on. And as a kid, that was like a comic book superhero. But yet, he was a real person. He could really do these things. And I thought, wow, that would be really cool. Just like some kids wanted to play hockey or football or whatever. This is what I wanted to do. And so it just kind of stuck there as a young kid. But yeah, when I was 12 years old, I was diagnosed with leukemia and given a low percentage chance of survival. And, it's kind of used as a guinea pig a little bit, testing out different chemotherapy treatments. And I had radiation and I survived. But I was no longer able to play sports as I could because it made some of my bones brittle and my doctors wouldn't let me do that. So for me, rather than being this bald kid that had lost all his hair from radiation, I started working on my magic tricks at the time and some escapes so that I had something else to be special about. I wasn't this sick kid that was, gonna die of cancer. And so it gave me another outlet, another creative outlet to flow my energy and my enthusiasm, which I had a lot as a kid. And so that kind of shaped it. And then through junior high and high school, I used to do things at school and escapes and shows, or when the police would come to school, my friends would get them to lock me up in their handcuffs, and then I'd escape, and it just kept building and building, and helped pay my way to university. And it was never easy. It was always a struggle, and trying as a struggling artist, trying to make ends meet, and help to fill my passion of trying to buy old handcuffs and locks or Houdini books, and but it worked really hard. I did my first big publicity escape on Halloween of 1982 from the old Winnipeg Free Press building where Houdini had escaped from back in 1923. And I broke Houdini's record. I don't know if you were there for that. You would have been really, really young.
I was born in '89, but I think I remember hearing about it from my parents.
Yeah, that I think probably thoughts didn't transfer, but yeah, that was a big moment. And of course, Houdini passed away on Halloween back in 1926. So that was my first big Houdini tribute,
Okay.
and it really launched my career.
Yeah, and it's amazing to go from, this illness to becoming, like you were saying, like a superhero yourself. And when I was a kid, I would watch you do this stuff, and I would go into the backyard and, with some rope and try to escape. And, I never could, but but it was definitely exciting to see, especially as, someone who grew up in comics. So I was already steeped in that. Oh, look at these heroes and these cool things people can do. And there you were, like at my birthday party. it was very exciting and inspiring. So I can see how it would have been that way looking at Houdini.
Yeah. Well, it was inspiring to meet your dad, and I've known him for many decades because he got to do the colorization of some of the greatest comic book heroes that there were. And so when he was able to help me create my own kind of comic book posters kind of thing, it was like, wow, I've become my hero. I've become my mentor. So your dad really helped me achieve that goal, and has still worked on creating things with me when I've asked. So it was an honor to come do a show for young Holly all those years ago.
It was like the ultimate collaboration. And actually, my next question, since you had mentioned paying homage to Houdini in your escapes, his most famous act was the Chinese water torture cell. And I remember watching you perform this escape and just being terrified for you the entire time, because you're upside down in like a large aquarium essentially. And I think that would be one of my nightmares. So what was that like, and how did it feel to successfully execute this iconic escape?
Well, it was the Chinese water torture cell was probably one of Houdini's most difficult and dangerous escapes. It was also featured in the 1953 movie with Tony Curtis, who played Houdini. And I had the pleasure of working with Tony Curtis many years ago on a TV show that we were doing in Tokyo. And he talked to me about playing Houdini and performing the water torture cell. And it's a very difficult, challenging escape. Like you said, it's like a big aquarium or foam booth, and it's filled with water. You get locked up in your ankles, and then you get raised high above the stage, swung over, and then lowered upside down and locked into this giant tank of water. Actually, I have one right over my shoulder there.
Oh, yeah.
And that one actually belonged to Doug Henning, another very famous magician and a former Winnipegger.
Okay.
And he used this Houdini water torture cell in his very first TV special in 1975. It closed the show and helped launch his TV career. And after he performed it, he said he would never do it again because it was so difficult, dangerous, too stressful on him and too stressful on his audience. So years later, I was able to acquire it, and I would perform it on very rare occasions in Las Vegas or Italy or Canada or Tokyo and things, but it wasn't my favorite escape because of the challenges. And like you said, it's called the water torture cell for a very good reason. It is torture going in the water upside down and being confined and not being able to reach your ankles or not be able to breathe, and water going up in your nose. It would be a horrible way to die.
So how many times have you done that now? Do you have a count?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time underwater, so my memory's not as great as it used to be. But I kind of took it out of my show, and I haven't done it for probably at least 12, 15 years. In the aspect, again, it was extremely stressful. I think the last time I actually did it, I was locked inside of it in concrete, filled full of concrete.
Oh my God.
I did that for Ripley's Believe It or Not event, and it's in one of the Ripley's Believe It or Not books of the escape. But the only problem, well, there was lots of problems, but one of the reasons I took it out is because Houdini always performed it with a curtain. And so he thought at that time that's how the mystery should be done, that people, they couldn't see how he was getting out. They had to wonder and leave it to their imagination. And now with the internet and TV, and everybody wants to see everything. They want to see the struggle. They want to see everything that's going on. So, and I couldn't do that with the water torture cell. So I worked on, and I developed plans from an old death tank. And so that's the water escape that I perform now on a limited basis. I just performed it in Quebec City in August
Oh, okay.
when I was there as part of the Magic Festival and the Festival of Magic, and they had the Olympics of Magic, which they have every few years around the world. And it was the very first time that it had ever been held in North America and Canada. And they chose Quebec City. So
Oh, darn.
uh,
I wish I'd known about that. I could have gone.
yeah, I would have told you, but I was tied up. So
Literally.
yeah.
So we are a haunted channel, so I
Mhm.
want to get into a little bit of the spooky stuff about spiritualism. This was a major topic in Victorian subculture, and despite
Mhm.
being the world's most famous magician, Houdini was not a believer, though he wanted to be. His search actually soured his relationship with Arthur Conan Doyle when he started exposing mediums, which I'm sure you know all about.
Mhm.
In 2007, you were involved in a play by aforementioned playwright Carolyn Gray called The Elmwood Visitation, which explored a time in 1923 when Arthur Conan Doyle traveled to Winnipeg to join the city's famous Hamilton Circle. I was lucky to see this play, and it's probably one of the things that stuck in my subconscious to inspire me to this day in my paranormal projects. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on spiritualism where Houdini is concerned, and also find out about your own views on the paranormal.
Well, I'm glad you got to see the play, the Elmwood Visitation, because it was a really neat project. It was a really neat play, and part of it was based on fact and events that happened in Winnipeg, with the Hamilton House, which wasn't too far from where I grew up as a kid. Um, but Houdini was a crusader against spiritualism. You're right. He did want to believe. His mother passed away, and he was really, really close to his mom. And he wanted to talk to her. He wanted to connect to her. So he started going to see mediums and spiritualists after she passed away. And it was around the time just after the First World War, where mothers across North America, around the world, had lost their sons fighting in the so-called Great War, and they wanted to reach out to their moms, and it became a business. It
Mm.
became a big business of the time. So Houdini would go to these mediums and ask for communication to his mother. And what he found out, he would see objects floating around the room, tables levitating, ghosts appear, ectoplasm coming, spiritual writings. But what he really noticed was that they weren't really being done in communication with the dead, that they were using magic tricks,
Mm.
that variations of things that magicians have done and were doing. And this really discouraged him because he really wanted to make contact. Um, but it discouraged him, but it also made him angry
Mm.
because these people weren't being truthful. They weren't being honest. Um, when you go see a magician, the magicians are one of the most honest people in the world, because when you go see a magician, their 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 magic is in the art that they produce. It has a rational explanation. It's not truly miracles,
Mhm.
um, but they do it in such a way that you're left wondering how it's done, but knowing that it's not done in a mystical way, even though it can be presented that way as part of their nature. And so Houdini got really angry at these spiritualists and started exposing them and their tricks, how they were making tables levitate, how they were making ghosts appear. And he went all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States and Congress, and exposing this and trying to get laws to protect people from the fake spiritualists. And they hated them because they were affecting their business, and they were making lots and lots of money deceiving people. So Houdini really tried hard to find the truth. So when Houdini died in Halloween of 1926, actually before he died, he devised a secret code known only between him and his wife, Bess. And he said, with this code, it was a 10-letter code, 10-word code. And he said, if I die, the way you will find out that it's really me is with this code and only with this code. So every year they would have a seance to try and bring Houdini back from the dead. This is an actual vinyl recording of the last official seance that Houdini that they gave in 1936 with Houdini's wife.
Oh, wow.
And it was atop of the Knickerbocker Hotel in Los Angeles, and Houdini's wife and prominent people were there. It's a really neat recording, and it was, I'm sure it's somewhere on the internet on YouTube if people want to listen to it on Halloween. It's kind of neat.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look that up for sure.
And the seances didn't actually stop then. They kind of continued, and they still continue to this day. And there'll be Houdini seances happening this Halloween at various places. But to date, nobody has come up with that secret code that Houdini left his wife. It did come out at one time, and Houdini's wife said, "Oh, that's it." But she'd actually revealed what it was, and they used that information to out. And it's also come out in different books as to what it is. So we can no longer gauge the secret code as to Houdini's contact. So if Houdini comes back, it would have to be, I think, in a bigger, grander way, or maybe it's, something, a pair of Houdini handcuffs falling off the wall, or something emotional or meaningful in that way, I think.
So do you think that there's a chance he'd come back?
Well, again, I would like to. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd love to meet Houdini or spend time with him. If we had that stairway to heaven where we could go and talk to our family, our friends, our great people in life, to get some insight and some guidance, I think would be an amazing thing. And I've lost people that were close to me. In 1986, I lost my best friend to cancer, Philip Hornan, and we did the same thing. We devised a secret code before he passed away, and I've never had anybody bring that code to me or say that they've made in contact. I've had special experiences where I've felt he's been with me or a part of me in some of the things that I've done, but I haven't got that special message that we desired and that I've told no one ever what it is. So, I think there are things in life that we don't understand. The human mind is an amazing organ. We can, read books, and the words can translate these visions and these lands and these peoples and characters in a way that they become very real. As an author and a writer, that's what you try and do every time you write something, is you try and make it real. You try and make the people reading it, understand, relate, feel that these people are really there in their mind. So, does the spirit world come back and create the same thing in our mind? I think people that have had those experiences really feel that and believe that, much like a good book or a novel. So, I believe we can have these feelings or these emotions or these connections. But I've never seen a physical ghost appear. I've had things that I haven't been able to explain, but I've never had the experience of like a Casper or a person that's not here sit next to me and be able to talk to or communicate. I have done Ouija boards and stuff. When I was in high school, we used to like to have fun with certain of my friends, and have certain apparitions appear and things, but it was more magical implied. But I can tell you, we would scare the dickens out of many people
Oh yeah.
with things that have happened. We created that emotion, but
Yeah. I think I'm at a similar point with you, because I've known people who will say flat out, paranormal stuff doesn't exist. But there's still so much in the world that's unexplained, right? And I think that when people say, oh, do you believe in ghosts? And especially since I do all this haunted stuff, I say I believe in something. I believe in something we haven't explained yet. So I think that there are very real experiences out there, and I wouldn't discount any of it. But I just think we don't have an explanation yet. And I think it would be very interesting if we could, for sure communicate with people who have left us at some point.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt if you walk into a cemetery, at midnight and a full moon on a foggy, chilly fall, there is no doubt you are going to have feelings. Yeah. There's going to be a chill down your spine. That environment is going to be there. It's going to send messages to your mind and to your body that something is there, something is happening. That's why you don't get a lot of people camping out at cemeteries. I mean, there's those select few. Yeah.
They won't let me in after dark, though. It really sucks.
Well, I remember the first time I went to Houdini's grave site in New York, and I had to rent a car and a driver, and he took me there, and a massive cemetery similar to what you have in Montreal. I thought, how am I going to find Houdini? And as we pulled up to the Jewish part of it, there was Houdini right front and center in this massive monument, and it was closed. And I go, it's closed. How can it be closed? It's Saturday. And my manager goes, well, Houdini was Jewish, wasn't he? I go, yeah. Well, it'd be closed on the Sabbath. And it was like, oh, no. So I had to open the locks of the cemetery to sneak in to go visit Houdini, because I was leaving the next day, so I couldn't come back. So I had a very spiritual presence going into Houdini's grave site to visit him, and looking over my shoulder and wonder what ill deed was going to happen, breaking into a cemetery and meeting him for the first time in his resting spot. It was a spiritual experience that I'll always remember.
It's somehow more appropriate, though, than just walking in. It's like I feel like you should have to, escape or do something, like it makes sense that it would happen that way somehow. That's
Things
very
are
cool.
more important or meaningful, I think, when we have to earn them or work towards them, right?
Absolutely.
If something comes too easily, it's not as appreciated or valued, I think.
Definitely. Speaking of ghosts, my host, Dr. Mab, who does videos in French, he could not be here today, unfortunately, because of scheduling, but he did send a question along, and I have one more after this, but I think the timing is good for this one. He wanted to know, what would you say to Houdini's ghost if you met him?
Wow, man, there's so many questions I have, because I've read and studied him for my entire adult life and my teenage life. So I mean, it would be a long list. I think he would probably get tired of it and want to go back to the other side and back beyond. But I'd like to know more about, well, his great escapes, but more about his personal struggles. How he dealt with becoming the most successful vaudeville entertainer in the history of vaudeville, and that the pressure that put on him, and how he coped with that, and how he managed to keep going. Anybody can be good once, right? The one-hit wonders, but to be good for such a long time, right? That really says something about Houdini and Houdini's career. And you think about it, Houdini's been dead for almost 100 years, but yet we're still talking about him. Yeah. We still remember him. How many entertainers do we really remember like this, right? So what was Houdini's secret? What was his real secret? Because when Houdini died, he gave all his props to his brother.
Yeah.
And in Houdini's will, he said after his brother dies, all his props would be destroyed. He wanted all his secrets to go into the afterlife. He didn't want anybody to ever know them.
Mm-hmm.
But his brother kind of came a little bit more on harder times, and he sold off or gave away all Houdini stuff. So that wish was never fulfilled. And in Niagara Falls, a lot of Houdini's props were on display there at the Houdini Magical Hall of Fame. And as a teenager and in my early 20s, I used to love doing pilgrimages to go see Houdini stuff, his water torture cell, his milk can, his handcuffs, locks, things that belonged to Houdini. And I became good friends with the owner, Henry Mueller, who I met on a Houdini seance in Los Angeles in Halloween 1987.
Oh, wow.
And he was a dear man, and he would give me tours and tell me about Houdini. And in 1995, the Houdini Museum mysteriously and mystically caught fire and burned down. And Houdini's most prized possession, his water torture cell, burned in that fire. They're not quite sure how the fire started, but was that a sign from Houdini coming back to say, look, I don't want my props to be exposed anymore. I don't want them being seen by the public. This is my wish. So maybe I would ask Houdini if he came back and lit that fire.
That might have been the grand paranormal gesture you were talking about.
Maybe Houdini was no small timer. He didn't do things in a small way. He did them in a great and spectacular way. In fact, even in the last so-called official seance in 1936, if you listen to it, Houdini didn't come back to ring bells or make tables float or speak in tongues or some far off voice. But after the seance, there was a thunderstorm. Rain came down on the top of the Knickerbocker Hotel where the seance was being held. Rain that hadn't rained in many months before that. It was kind of a drought condition. And it rained for a few minutes and then stopped. So in the recording, it talks about, well, would Houdini come back in such a minor way to ring a bell or to open a pair of handcuffs? He would come back in a magnificent way from the heavens and rain upon his tears upon everybody else. Will we know that? That's in each of our hearts and minds to think about or wonder about, or what the truth was.
It's a beautiful image to conjure, though. I like that.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what spiritualists did. They created these images. And you talked about the Elmwood Visitations, the play in the book by Carolyn Gray. So the Hamilton House was a spiritual hotbed in Winnipeg in the 1900s and 1920s. So much, like you said, that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle actually came here on part of his quest on spiritualism. And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was one of the smartest men there was. The writer and creator and inventor of Sherlock Holmes, who was the best detective of all time. And they gave him a show, and the ectoplasm appeared and the tables have floated. And Dr. Hamilton, who was a very smart and wise man, has over 600 photographs of spiritualism and things that happened that are are in the library at the University of Manitoba as part of the Hamilton collection. And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was part of this. But so he has pictures of spiritualism producing ectoplasm, making people appear, having tables float. It's pretty remarkable photos of scientific proof of actual ghostly phenomenon. But unfortunately, when you start doing some research, Dr. Hamilton would have his seance room, and he had cameras lined all along the top of the ceiling, and he would take these pictures. But Dr. Hamilton was such a believer and really wanted to believe in this so much that his science is flawed. And this is one of the things we always have to be careful about when we're investigating things, that we don't let our emotions or our beliefs take over and try and help hinder the scientific evidence that's being presented to us. And so what he would do, what the mediums would do, they would tell him when to take the pictures. They'd say, okay, take the picture now. And then click, the cameras would go off and they would take a picture of a darkened room, and all of a sudden a table flying through here, or the ectoplasm appearing over the face. Mm-hmm. So it's easy to take a picture of a table once you've taken it in a dark room and thrown it, and they snap that picture. And so you see the picture of the table flying through the room, and it's like, oh my God, that's amazing. But you have to look at the pretext of it.
Yeah.
And what happened in that moment before. Mm-hmm. So, and when you see things like that, it kind of jeopardizes a lot of the other stuff that happened there. So without a doubt, a lot of strange things happened in the Hamilton house, and it still exists today. If you're in Winnipeg, just over the Disraeli bridge on Henderson Highway. But yeah, it loses credibility when you understand how some of the photographs were taken. But it's an amazing collection to see. It's fascinating.
Very cool stories around that house too. I was fascinated with it for a while. And I think like one of the reasons that I want to investigate paranormal stuff is because even these days where you have a lot of setups where you'll have believers, and then they'll also have very strong skeptics to balance that out, because it's hard not to be biased when you really believe in it. Even with that, it's like, okay, how much can you trust? You can only really trust yourself. So I think it's important, if you're interested in that, to really do your research and try things out yourself and see what you genuinely feel.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. Feeling something is not evidence that it exists, but maybe that's evidence for yourself, right? Mm-hmm. For your belief. It's like religion. We can't prove religion exists, but it's a belief that people hold, right? Mm-hmm. Until somebody from the skies comes down and strikes lightning into us or fear. But belief is a very, very strong ability that people have. You have to believe in a dream to make a dream come true, to visualize it. If you don't believe in it, it won't happen.
Yeah.
Right. So so belief can be your best friend or your worst enemy.
Very, very true. So this episode of Spooky Stories is going to be on YouTube October 29th as our Halloween special. And as you've mentioned a couple times, Houdini's tragic death happened on Halloween in 1926 and was unfortunately set in motion by a Montreal student, making this a topic of particular interest for us to cover here and at this time of year. So in the 96 years since his passing, tell us a bit about finally how you and those in your industry pay homage to the late great artist these days.
Yeah. Well, again, every Halloween they do a seances in various places to try and keep Houdini's memory alive. If anybody can escape from the dead, it would be Houdini. So again, this year there will be Houdini seances going on. I've been involved in several over the years. I don't know if significant things have happened to make me believe it was really Houdini, but some strange things have happened that make you scratch your head or wonder if that's really there. I myself have died on Halloween. in doing another tribute to Houdini in
Yeah.
1983. I got locked into a wooden coffin and thrown into the icy Red River in Winnipeg.
I remember
And
that.
rather than becoming an escape from a wooden coffin, which I have in the back corner over there somewhere,
Oh, yeah.
that's the actual coffin that I died in. Um, it became an escape from death.
Mhm.
And I remember being locked underwater for like 4 minutes, no breathing, blue. They pulled me out. I was blue unconscious and dead. And I got to see the lights at the end of the tunnel and everything that people talk about. It was very peaceful. It wasn't scary. I wasn't afraid. But somewhere in here, I knew I wasn't going to die. And I got sent back and came back to life. So every Halloween is important for me to do something special for Houdini. Um, I'm just getting ready to do a death-defying escape in the next couple of days. So hopefully I'll be around on Halloween to
I
to
hope
watch the
so.
broadcast and do something special with Houdini this year.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, it's an important part of my life and many others. So it'll be maybe this is the year Houdini comes back. I mean, we don't know. I mean, again, you talk about the significance of Montreal. Houdini loved performing in Montreal, and his second last show was in Montreal at the Princess Theater.
Yeah.
And Houdini had given a lecture at McGill University on spiritualism. And after the show, the school reporter came backstage and drew a picture of Houdini, and Houdini thought it was really neat. And he invited him to his show that night. And when he came to the show, he brought a boxing friend of his with him, and he was really pushing Houdini on the spiritualism and trying to get answers. And Houdini was being kind of vague and not answering what he wanted. And then one of the things that Houdini was in such great shape when he died at the age of 52 that he would allow people to punch him in the stomach and it would rebound like again a comic book hero. It wouldn't hurt him.
Mhm.
And so the boxer asked Houdini if he could hit him in the stomach, and Houdini said, "Yeah, sure." And so Houdini had been lying in his dressing room, kind of lounging. And so as Houdini stood up to take the punch, the boxer quickly hit him 3 times in rapid succession, kind of knocking Houdini back. And it ruptured his appendix. Houdini got up, allowed him to take a blow, but it did damage that would eventually bring Houdini under.
Mhm.
He did a show in Montreal. He traveled to Detroit, barely made it through his show there, went to the hospital. They did 3 different surgeries on him. And unfortunately, there was no penicillin or antibiotics in 1926. They hadn't been created yet.
Yeah.
And on 1:26 p.m. on Halloween Day, Houdini told his brother, he says, "I'm tired of fighting," and escaped to the great beyond.
What a way to go.
Yeah, I mean, if you could pick your date, I think Houdini would have chosen Halloween because it's a memorable
Yeah.
date.
Yeah.
Um, full of mystery and mayhem and
Maybe,
goblins
yeah.
and ghosts.
Maybe I'll do my own Houdini seance here in Montreal on
Yeah.
Halloween.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, I mean, if you could do it even by the Princess Theater. Now I
Yeah.
think it's like a store.
Yeah, it's a fairly modern storefront. It was kind of hard for me to find when I was going to take pictures.
It
So you
is.
don't have the character anymore, but that location exists.
Yeah. I wonder if they would let you into the basement, into the old
Maybe.
dressing room. Because
Oh,
Houdini, you think he used to walk the doors and the alleyways. I've been there once before when I was in Montreal. Uh, and the back alley, the back way is still the old entrance as it was when Houdini was there. So
okay.
maybe it's something on the back steps,
Hmm.
or like I said, if they would allow you to take a tour in the basement and see if you get any feelings or any vibrations, or ask Houdini to come say hello.
Yeah, I'll have
If
to
you're
take a
able,
look into it for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I would love to do that myself. But if anything happens, let me know. I could send you some of Houdini's own handcuffs or something to
Yeah.
participate in that.
That would
So,
that would be amazing. I mean every video I put out, I put chapter 1 on the title to sort of leave it open to future investigations and stuff. So that's I would love to do a part 2 and investigate a little bit more, do our own seance and stuff. I think that would be very fascinating.
yeah. Well, if you or anybody does see Houdini, tell him I said hi, and I'm greatly appreciated for the footsteps that he left me to follow. They've been big footprints, but and it's always hard to escape Houdini's shadow. But it's been an honor and a privilege walking in that shadow and doing Houdini's great escapes, and then creating my own escapes that not even Houdini, the great Houdini, ever attempted. But I love talking about Houdini, and I love sharing what I know about Houdini. And someday we'll meet for sure. I know that.
I think you've done an awfully good job of following in his
Hmm.
footsteps.
Well,
But
thank you. I appreciate that.
you're welcome. Before you go, tell us a bit about what you're working on, what you can actually tell us about it, and also let us know where subscribers can find you online if they'd like to follow your adventures.
Yeah, well, I'm on Facebook. I have like a personal Facebook, and then I have World's Greatest Escape Artist, Dean Gunnarson, on Facebook. Um, I do have like Twitter and Instagram and stuff. I'm not quite as big into that aspects, but it's there. But there's lots of videos on YouTube of me being chained up in the coffin and dying, and then putting me out, or footage of me hanging by my toes from a trapeze, getting out of a straitjacket over Hoover Dam, escaping, and chained and thrown out of an airplane, and those kind of things. There's lots of that stuff on YouTube if people wanted to go and watch. I do have a big escape coming up really shortly that I hope to still be around for Halloween. I'll send you an air date on that as soon as I hear. And I'm
Perfect.
always working on things. I'm the book that Carolyn Gray wrote called Dean Gunnarson, The Making of an Escape Artist, which talks about some of my early escapes and how I got into it, and with my friend Philip, and us breaking out of jail cells and things. We're working on having that put into a movie.
Oh, great.
We just got funding to do kind of a pilot project for that. So that's really exciting. And I'm always working on more shows. I do a lot of corporate stuff, and hoping that COVID escapes this planet soon, and I can get back to China and touring more around the world.
I agree with you there.
Yeah. So,
Oh,
and then my webpage is alwaysescaping.com.
yes. And I'll also link everything in the description down below, as I always do, so people can take a look. So thank you so much for joining me today, Dean. It's been great to see you. And I really, really appreciate you being a part of Haunted Montreal's spooky story sessions.
Oh, it's been my honor. A great way to spend Halloween. And if you or any of your guests are ever in Manitoba or near Righty Mountain where I live, if they mention your show, that they saw your broadcast, I'd be more than happy to give them a private tour of the morgue and
Oh,
all the magical things that I have here.
excellent. It's a great offer. Highly recommend taking him up on that. Okay, I guess we will wrap it up, and I'll hopefully talk to you again soon.
Great. All right. Always remember, nothing is impossible if you truly believe.